Hi. What's your response when I say the word revision? We're talking about writing here. Now, some people like me go, "Ooh, I love revision. It's the best part." But a lot of people, so if that's you, then you probably don't need to hear this. But a lot of people are like, revision, oh, I hate revision. I write my story, and by story, I mean fiction or creative nonfiction. I write my story and I'm done. It's finished. It's what I want to say. There's no revision. Or people confuse copy editing with revision. They're like, I've written it and then I revise, I go through and I fix sentences and I correct my punctuation and I'm like, okay. So just a reminder what revision is. Writing is revision. And revision means, look at the word, revision. It means to see again. And so when we revise, we go back in and look at what we have and reshape it. So I think from my experience with working with writers, that a lot of the reason people don't like revision is because they don't know what to do. You've written this piece, it's finished in your mind, and now what do? I mean, you look at it as all of a piece, and what are you supposed to do with it except tinker around the edges and play with sentences? Not, I love playing with sentences, nothing wrong with that. But I mean, fixing things. What do you do? So I may do a couple of videos on this, but I just want to start by very simply saying every story, and again, fiction or nonfiction, hangs on something. So some stories hang on, and by hang, I mean like the scaffolding that holds it together. Some stories hang on plot. Plot's the most important thing. Okay. Some stories hang on characterization. Some stories hang on setting. You have all of these elements, of course, but your story hangs on something. It's supported by something. And some hang on language. And some hang on theme, or maybe, a combination of two of these. And so if you start there, I'm just leaving you this one piece of information suggestion this week is if you recognize what your story is hanging on and start there and see how effectively it's working. If your story is hanging on plot, then make sure there aren't any holes in your plot. Start there. Start with that one element and look through your story again and see how well that plot is working. Are there holes? Are there places that just aren't really believable? Did you leave something out? So look at the plot. If your story hangs more, literary fiction tends to hang more on characterization. If your story is hanging on character development, well, have you developed your characters well? Are they all developed? Which doesn't mean there will be a lot of them, especially in a story. There may be 2 or 3, a short story. But do your characters need more development? Is the story not working because your characters are shallow or some of the motivations aren't clear? So that's a place to start, looking at your characters. If your story is hanging on theme, that's a place to start. Is the theme running through your piece? Not bludgeoning the reader with a point, but is the piece holding together and supporting that theme? It's actually, I'm working on a memoir right now. I just finished my quote, shitty first draft. That's what, now I'm going to forget her name as I'm sitting here in front of a computer and I can't remember her name. Darn. Anyway, there's a novelist who calls it Anne Lamott calls it the shitty first draft. I love that because that's what it is. You're talking to yourself. You're just getting it down. Again, fiction or creative nonfiction, just getting it out. You're not done. That's just the beginning. So now you start shaping. And I finished a shitty first draft of a memoir in December. That was my plan, was to spend a year. And now in revising, I'm seeing again, I'm starting over. I mean, what I had was decided what was going into it, and that could change, but I kind of have parameters around what I'm addressing in this piece. And I wasn't sure how I was revising. And then it occurred to me finally, what relief, that it's what I have to look at first is thematic. So once I realized that, recognized what's holding it together, what thread is going through, then I was like, okay, that's where I'll start the revision. So whatever you decide you want to look at first, and if you've not done this before, that's okay. Just pick something and run with that one element, and then go back and something else. And as you get more practiced at it, the longer you've been writing, some of you are brand new writers, some of you are more accomplished writers, have been doing it a longer time, but you'll start to be able to do 2 or 3 things at the same time. So, but don't worry if it's one thing at a time. You know, it's not a rush. You want to do it well, not necessarily fast. So that's my recommendation for today is, in revision, remember that it means to see again. You're making discoveries. You're starting from, what you threw down, and now look at each element of fiction or creative nonfiction and see how effectively that element is working for you. Okay. And if you need help with that, that's what I do. It's one of the things I do. I'm Pam Sorellis of Winged Horse Writing Studio. I teach workshops on introduction to fiction and introduction to memoir. I teach more advanced classes too, but for purposes of this discussion, and we play with the elements of fiction in real time, online workshops, but real time, working together in a small group, and get to really get a handle on those elements of fiction. So if that's something you might be interested in, you can check out my website at wingedhorsewritingstudio.com. If you have any questions ever, just shoot me an email or use the form on the website, and I'd love to talk to you about it. But revision is a good thing. It's fun. Just do one thing at a time. Okay, I'll talk to you again. Take care.